Hi, welcome to Simply Current Affairs. Today we will be doing our day 3 editorial analysis and answer writing. So if you are new to this video series, then please watch my introductory video given in the playlist to know how to participate in this answer writing program, which is open to all. Before going into the day 3 editorial, first we will discuss the day 2 question and I will evaluate one day 2 answer. Then we will go to the today's agenda. See, the model answer for the day 2 question, the evaluated copy of the top 20 papers, and also the content for the today's editorial analysis. Everything will be available in the description. You can download. So just sit to watch whatever I am saying. You need not make notes separately. The question which I gave yesterday is, the World Environment Day 2025 theme, Beat Plastic Pollution, highlights the escalating global plastic waste crisis. In this context, analyze the existing gaps in limiting the usage of plastic and suggest practical measures to effectively address the challenge. There are two parts here. I explained in the previous lecture, previous video. Whenever there are two parts, don't think that you have to give equal weightage for both the parts. Usually the second part will be the actual question. So here the first part is the context. They have themselves mentioned that the first part is the context. So in the first part, don't try to write about World Environment Day and all. In the first part, the actual focus area is global plastic waste crisis. So you can start your answer. So you can explain what is plastic pollution. From there you can say what is the crisis, how is the production level, what kind of damage we are causing. That crisis we can highlight. Okay, I have seen some answers. One entire page they are devoting it for plastic crisis. Not required. That much you need not write. So explain about the plastic crisis, then go to the second part. Second part, read carefully. In this context, analyze the existing gaps in limiting the usage of plastics. That means efforts were taken to limit the usage. However, there are some gaps. So you have to highlight the effort taken and what is the reality. Why that is happening. That is what is analysis. What is the effort taken? What is the reality? For example, Government of India has come up with a concept called as this extended producer's responsibility. But however, it is not being effectively enforced. Effort has been taken, but enforcement is poor. Because of that, there is a gap. Right? And suggest practical measures that you will write. What we have to do, practical measures you have to suggest to effectively address the challenge. Finally, you can give a conclusion. So, I have taken the answer of Nirmala. So, Nirmala, you have written well, really well. There are certain things which you have to change, which I will highlight. See, you have given the introduction, you have highlighted the plastic crisis. See, all those are fine. But as I mentioned, you have written a lot with respect to plastic crisis. So you have given more information. But here, since it is a 15 marker, it is fine. But if it is 10 marker, this much information should not be given. Anyhow, you have given in good facts. Whatever we discussed in the class, that you have given all the facts. Highlighting the waste crisis, you have highlighted. Then comes the gaps in limiting the plastic wastage. So, weak enforcement of ban. India has banned the single-use plastic, but items like carry bags still widely available in market. Right? The effort has been taken, but that effort is not being practically enforced. Inadequate waste management. So, we are not having sufficient waste management system. And you have also given an example. Look at Yamuna River. Right, the Yamuna River cleanup project still struggle because of plastic dumping. For every point you have given an example that is really, really good. Alright, third point, high consumer and industry dependence. Because of the too much of dependence, even the efforts taken by the government is not working well. For example, people prefer this plastic cheap because it is cheap, it is durable, all the PET bottles are durable and cheaper. So, there is more dependence. That is another reason why we are not able to limit the usage. Okay, limited alternatives. See, we have alternatives like banana stem plates, areca nut leaf plates. But however, these are costlier These are not sufficiently available. Supply constraint is there, right? So the lack of infrastructure which you have highlighted, and also you have given practical measures. See, one important thing which I have to highlight here, whenever you are putting subheadings and you are writing, so here see first point, second point, third point, fourth point, fifth point. When you go for the second subheading, like how she has done, start with the continuous points. That means subheading 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Subheading 2, go with 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If there is subheading 3, go with 11, 12, 13, 14, so that the evaluator will have a feeling. See, ultimately, we are all humans. Evaluator is also a human. And if you are highlighting to the evaluator that you have written 15 points, 14 points, psychologically, it will make the evaluator, maybe the evaluator may not give extra marks, but definitely he will not consider reducing the marks. So, you can follow this practice. So, practical measures strengthen the policy enforcement through digital tracking of plastic production. Okay, and again, Gujarat Plastic Waste Buyback Scheme example has been given. Improve the waste management infrastructure. So, the EPR, extended producer responsibility, has to be enforced. Mandatory collection has to be enforced. Again, for which HUL's plastic waste collection example has been given. So, your answer is really good. Circular economy you have highlighted. Global cooperation you have also brought in the plastic treaty point, recent current development. So your answer is really good. The only problem which I see is your handwriting is also fine, but certain words I am not able to understand. I spend a lot of energy in trying understanding your certain words. Okay, that you try to improve. Apart from that, this is one of the good answer. And you have given example for almost all the point that will definitely fetch good marks for your answer, right? Every other participant can also download this copy and just see how she has written. One common mistake which I have observed is disproportionate weightage. Okay, for the plastic crisis, a lot of space was given. Another problem which I was seeing is you are dumping a lot of facts. The facts were not organically in it. Look at Nirmala's paper. She has given a lot of facts in the form of examples which is connected to these statements. But however, don't force fit the facts. That is not going to help you. Right? So we will go to today's agenda. So we have taken an editorial topic from the business standard. The topic deals with common but differential responsibility. First, let me explain some basics about this topic. Then we will go into the actual editorial content. See, only in 1972, for the first time, UN was convening a conference related to environment. A consciousness was born that we should not take environment for granted. We have to take efforts to conserve the environment. We have to take efforts to protect our biodiversity. We have to take efforts to address this climate change. All these consciousness were born in 1972. Even before, here and there, some conferences were conducted, but such big conference where almost all the leaders across the countries were participating. From India also, our then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was participating in that 1972 conference, which was held in Stockholm. The conference is UN Conference on Human and Environment Development. Right? So in this conference, across the world, many countries were introducing legislations to protect the environment. For example, India also, Wildlife Protection Act, Air Pollution Act, Water Pollution Act, all these acts were consequences or byproducts of this UN conference. Then years rolled. Even after 20 years from 1972, there was no big improvement in conserving the environment. So in 1992, UN convened one more conference in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro. UN was convening a conference, that is UN Conference on Environment and Development. So in this conference is also called as Earth Summit. This conference is also called as Earth Summit. So in this conference, three important conventions were signed. The first convention is UNFCCC. The second convention is CBD. The third convention is UNCCD. So what is this UNFCCC? United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. This convention is regarding climate change. Second one, Convention on Biological Diversity. Convention on biological diversity. The third convention, UN Convention to combat desertification. UN Convention to combat desertification. See, when the soil loses its fertility, then it will become degraded. If that soil degradation continues, then the soil will become desertified. This is called as desertification. Right? Now, we are interested to discuss about this UNFCCC because the article is also dealing with UNFCCC. See, all these three are conventions, they are not treaties. They are conventions. Those countries, convention means a kind of framework. Okay, those countries who are signing these frameworks, later period, those countries who signed these frameworks, they will come with treaties. They will come with binding agreements. Okay. Now, those countries which have signed this UNFCCC, those countries, India also has signed. So, those countries which have signed this UNFCCC, those countries are called as parties. Okay. Now, these parties will be meeting once in a year. They will be meeting once in a year. That meeting is called as Conference of Parties. That meeting is called as Conference of Parties, COP. COP1, COP2. Okay. So, why we are discussing about this is coming November, there is going to be Conference of Parties 30th Conference of Parties is going to be held in Brazil. That is why we are discussing about it. But we will go along with the timeline. So, till now I have explained about this 1992 Earth Summit. 3 important conventions were introduced. And we are talking about UNFCCC. Those countries which have signed this convention, they will be meeting once in a year. Every year they will be meeting and they will be arriving at some kind of agreements. Okay. So, now in 1997, a conference of parties was held in Kyoto. Kyoto, Japan. Okay, in Japan, in Kyoto, the conference of parties was held. So, in that conference, certain agendas were discussed regarding climate change. See, you have to understand the primary objective of UNFCCC is to stabilize greenhouse gas concentration. So, stabilize greenhouse gas concentration. See, I already said UNFCCC is primarily focusing on climate change. Why climate is changing? Because these greenhouse gases emission are increasing. Because of this increased greenhouse gas emission, the global warming is happening and climate is changing. So, if you want to address this climate change, we have to stabilize the greenhouse gas concentration. See, completely removing greenhouse gas concentration from the atmosphere will make Earth completely frozen. So, we need some amount of greenhouse gas concentration. Okay. So, the agenda is to stabilize the greenhouse gas concentration. So, in this 1997 Kyoto Convention, the Kyoto meeting, the countries agreed to divide themselves into 2 groups. So, the parties, the countries' signatories, they agreed to divide themselves into 2 groups. One group is called as Annex 1 countries, another group is called as non-Annex 1 countries. So, assume there are 100 plus countries. These 100 plus countries, they were dividing themselves into 2 categories. One is Annex 1 countries, another one is non-Annex 1 countries. So, in the Annex 1 countries, all the developed nations were grouped. All the other countries, all the developing, underdeveloping, all those countries were brought under non-Annex 1 grouping. Okay. So, why it was divided into 2? Because, see, now we have to stabilize the greenhouse gas concentration, no doubt, because every country is emitting, lot of carbon emission is happening, greenhouse gas emissions are happening. So, every country should take the responsibility to reduce the emission. Only when you reduce the emission, greenhouse gas stabilization can happen. Only when greenhouse gas concentration stabilizes, climate change can be addressed. Okay, so all the countries, they have the responsibility to reduce the carbon emission. But however, the developed nation, they have more responsibility. Why? Because their cumulative emission over the period is very, very high. See, till 1850s, in the climate, there was no big problem. From 1850s, industrial revolution started. These industrial revolution resulted in lot of carbon emission. And who was leading the industrial revolution? It was these developed countries which was leading the industrial revolution. So it is a responsibility of the developed countries to take more efforts, and also it is them who have more money. Right? So you need to, if you want to stabilize the greenhouse gas concentration, you have to improve your infrastructure. Money is also required. So developed nations, they are the one who emitted a lot. Their cumulative emission is very high. They are the one, now they have more money. So all the countries should reduce their emission, but developed countries, that is the Annex 1 countries, they have to reduce more. Right? This is called, this is climate justice. This is what is climate justice. We cannot say every country should reduce the carbon emission by 20%, 30%. That is not correct. Developed countries, they have to make more contribution. That is what is climate justice. To ensure this climate justice, a mechanism was introduced that is called as common but differential responsibilities. Everyone has a common responsibility of reducing the emission, but the developed nation will have differential responsibilities. This is what Kyoto Protocol said. So the Annex 1 countries was given clear target, binding target, that developed countries, America, Europe, you have to reduce. The non-Annex countries, such target, binding target was not given. Voluntarily, the non-Annex countries were asked to reduce their emissions. This Kyoto Protocol, this is what is the Kyoto Protocol? This Kyoto Protocol was not successful. For the simple reason, the developed countries, they were not okay with these kind of differential treatment. Developed countries were saying, what is this? In this non-Annex countries, we have India, we have China. This India and China, they are responsible for higher emissions. If you take country-wise emission, India and China are big emitters. For India and China, there is no bigger target, but for America alone, we'll be having bigger target. This is not fine. So developed countries, they were not okay with these kind of differential commitments. America did not ratify this Kyoto Protocol. Canada, Japan, Russia, they decided to walk out of this Kyoto Protocol. But they are failing to realize that India, China, we are big emitters, no doubt. But look at the per capita comparison. In America, the per capita carbon emission is almost 14 tons per year. In India, per capita carbon emission is roughly 2.1 tons per year. Where is India? Where is America? Even if you take China, the emission is higher. The per capita emission is also high. In China, the per capita emission is 8 tons per year. 8 tons of carbon dioxide. But America, it is 14 plus tons of carbon dioxide per year. Per person emits 14 plus tons of carbon dioxide. In India, it is only roughly 2.1 tons. So, see, we have to take this per capita emission into consideration. But the developed nations, they are not willing to understand this basic common sense. And look at America. The American leaders, the current leader, he feels that the entire climate change discussion is a scam. Anyhow, this Kyoto Protocol was not successful. So again, years rolled. In 2015, a significant thing happened. What happened, sir? The global average temperature got increased by 1 degree Celsius. The global average temperature. So let's assume, before 1850, let us assume the global average temperature was 25 degrees Celsius. Assume global average is 25 degrees Celsius. But in 2015, the temperature got increased to 26 degrees Celsius. So there was a plus 1 degree Celsius rise. According to IPCC report, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC report, if the temperature increases by 1.5 degrees Celsius, another 1.5 degrees Celsius, right? Already 1 degree Celsius temperature got increased. If the temperature increases to 1.5 degrees Celsius, then the consequence is going to be very, very disastrous. And if it is going to cross 2 degrees Celsius, okay, from 1 to 1.5, and if it crosses 2 degrees Celsius, the consequences cannot be reversed at all. That means, see, if the temperature from 26, if it becomes 27 degrees Celsius, if it crosses 27 degrees Celsius, then the consequences cannot be reversed. Glaciers will be melting, sea level will be rising, coastal countries will be submerged, developing countries will be affected. This climate change can create new diseases, the consequences will be disastrous. So in 2015, sensing this 1 degree Celsius rise, all the countries, they became more conscious. So there, a conference of parties were met in 2015. That conference of parties is the COP21, which was held in Paris. So where all the countries were seriously discussing what shall we do. Already we have crossed 1 degree Celsius. If this continues, 1.5 also will be crossed, 2 also will be crossed, then we will be at a serious danger. So in the Paris summit, the countries, they decided to go with voluntary targets. In Kyoto summit, what happened? Countries were divided. For Annex 1 countries, specific target. For non-Annex countries, voluntary target. But the Paris summit, the CBDR concept was avoided, where all the countries were asked to take a responsible stance. All the countries has to come up with a voluntary target, which is referred as nationally determined contributions. Accordingly, many countries were saying that they were coming up with their voluntary targets. For example, India was coming up with our voluntary targets that by 2030, we will reduce the carbon emission by 45%. By 2070, we will achieve net zero carbon emission. See, net zero carbon emission means don't think that India will not emit carbon at all. Net zero carbon emission means if India is emitting 1 ton of carbon, India, by growing trees or through some other sequestration technique, they will capture that carbon. So whatever extra carbon we release, that extra carbon will be captured. That is called as net zero emission. So India says by 2070, we will achieve net zero. By 2030, we will reduce the carbon dioxide emission by 45%, like that. Like India was coming up with various targets. Other countries were also coming up with various targets. These targets are called as nationally determined contributions. However, in the Paris summit, that CBDR principle was not adopted because in Kyoto only it was not successful. Right. So now time rolled. Now from 2015, now we are in 2025. Time rolled. So what is the status of our climate change? According to the UNEP emission gap report, emission gap report, if the current trend continues, the global average temperature will increase by 3 degrees Celsius. It will cross this 3 degrees Celsius mark. Now there is no big action. There is no big action right now. Many countries, they are not adhering to these NDC targets. India is responsible. You have to understand, India is responsible. Whatever India has promised, that we are trying to achieve. So we are on the timeline, right? So we are performing better. India is responsible, but not all the countries are responsible. We are seeing a lot of inaction from various countries. For example, let's take USA. USA said that by 2030, they will reduce their carbon dioxide emission by 40%. They said they will reduce it by 40%. But recently, you know what they did? Recently, they revised their target and they said, sorry, we will reduce it only by 3%. Such developed nations with a lot of resources, with a lot of technology, they are not behaving responsibly. And think about developing countries without sufficient financial resources. They are not able to adhere to these NDC targets. So the climate change is becoming more faster. That is going to result in a lot of negative consequences. According to ADB, Asian Development Bank, Imagine if there is no action at all, if no country is taking any effort, to combat this climate change, then India's GDP will be affected by 24%. India's GDP will be falling by 24%, according to Asian Development Bank estimates, when no country is taking any action regarding carbon emission. So, because of this inaction, or because of this irresponsible attitude of various countries and various developed countries and other countries, who is going to get affected? Countries like India will be getting affected. We have to pay the price. Developing countries has to pay the price. So what shall we do? Here where the author of the article is coming. So the 30th Conference of Parties. The 30th Conference of Parties is going to be held in November 2025 in Brazil. So he suggests that, CBDR is what will ensure climate justice. We have to reintroduce CBDR. In 1997, in the Kyoto Protocol, the common but differential responsibilities was based on countries' emission. Okay? But what the author says, that is not right. That is not justice. We have to go with per capita emission. So let us have a per capita emission threshold. So the author says, if the per capita emission is kept as not 3%, if the per capita emission is kept as 3 tons, if the per capita emission kept as 3 tons of carbon dioxide per year, if we are able to achieve this, then definitely we can address this climate change. That is, we will not allow the global temperature to cross 2 degrees Celsius. I hope you are able to understand what I am trying to say. The author says, we will go with CBDR once again. In the Kyoto in 1997, the case was different. The CBDR was dividing, it was applied by dividing the countries into developed and developing, and developed countries contributed more. So accordingly, differential responsibilities were placed. But the author says, now we will reintroduce CBDR. Let the CBDR act based on per capita emission. Let us not go with countries' emission. Let us go with per capita emission. So in per capita emission, let us keep a target as 3 tons. So those countries who are emitting above 3 tons per capita, we will put them in a group. Who is less than 3 tons, we can put it in another group. So common but differential responsibility can be arrived based on this per capita criteria. So why this 3 tons, sir? Why this 3 tons? Because studies are saying that if per capita is less than, it is equal to 3 tons or less than 3 tons per year, then the global temperature increase can be controlled below 2 degrees Celsius. That is the reason why this 3-ton criteria is being highlighted. So the author says in the coming COP 30, let us try to enforce CBDR. Second point is, India should take efforts to form a coalition of low emission countries. For example, Brazil, Indonesia, Egypt. So like this, those countries whose emission is less, who are responsible basically, a coalition should be formed. And this coalition should put pressure on the developed nations. Even if developed nations like USA, if they are not responsible, if they are not committing anything, let's leave them. Let us form a coalition of other countries and we will ensure that the emission reduction is achieved. Right? Because let's be pragmatic, let's be very practical. US definitely, with the current leadership, they are not going to take efforts to reduce the emission. So let's forget about that. Because we are the one, India, developing countries are the one who are going to get affected badly. So we have to form a coalition and we have to protect ourselves. This is what is the practical solution. The third point, the author says, those countries who have come up with the NDC, nationally determined contribution, alright, those countries, they have to give a clear timeline. So India is responsible, but not every country is equally responsible. A clear timeline, a broader target and a smaller target has to be achieved at regular intervals. All these has to be enforced. Right? So these changes has to be brought in, or else it is going to be disastrous. Developing country like India is going to be largely affected. This is what the article is all about. I hope you got clarity on the topics which we discussed today. So you can also give your opinion. So in the comment section, you also share your opinion about the author suggestion. If you have any other suggestion, you can also post it in the comment section. Right. So now I will give you a question based on our discussion. Explain the principle of climate justice. Discuss the relevance and contemporary challenges of adopting the common but differential responsibilities framework in global climate negotiations. So in this question, you are going to introduce by explaining what is this climate justice. Then you are going to discuss the relevance and the present challenges, relevance of CBDR and present challenges of CBDR in the global climate negotiations. 10 marker question, write for 150 words. Right? So please submit your answer before 9 a.m. of tomorrow. Email it to me at upscwithgunasar@gmail.com in PDF format. I repeat, please submit your answers before 9 a.m. of tomorrow. Once after emailing me, please give your name in the comment section that, sir, I have sent an email. And give your feedback in the comment section. That is what is motivating me and my team to work more. Right, friends, I'll see you tomorrow with another interesting editorial topic. Till then, bye. Take care from Guna Mathivanan.